Okay, I'm going to start with some questions. What makes an opinion popular in a country? Is it steered by our collective experience, our organic reflections and conversations within a country, or is it steered by the media? Do we draw our opinions from the media, or do we buy into media sources that align with our internal preconceived ideas and beliefs? That would mean, if that is the case, that our purchasing decisions create market pressures that steer the views and conduct of different media companies. Remember that we are in the end a pluralistic society, and therefore there are many different newspapers and broadcasters that we could turn to. The core underlying theory is, do we take our political views from media providers, or do our inherent political views steer media providers? Okay, so let's deep dive into the impact of broadcast media on voting behaviour. What do we mean by broadcast media? Essentially television. All forms of broadcast media are bound by the law to remain neutral and offer balanced reporting of elections. Under the Broadcasting Act of 1996 and the Communication Act of 2003, Ofcom is empowered to set broadcasting standards, and Section 5 of these standards establishes the principle that Ofcom must ensure that news in whatever form is reported with due accuracy and presented with due impartiality. Now, Ofcom has clarified this terminology. Impartiality itself means not favouring one side over another. Due means adequate or appropriate to the subject and nature of the programme, so due impartiality does not mean an equal division of time has to be given to every view, or that every argument and every facet of every argument has to be represented. So there we go. Don't think that due impartiality means that broadcasters have to act like a politics essay, giving 50% of time to each side of the debate and the alternative views around a topic. It just means that if there's a meaningful position to be represented, it has to get due consideration. We have seen attempts at this due impartiality in many different situations and circumstances, such as coverage of the debate between Leave and Remain in the run-up to the 2016 referendum. The Digital News Project 2020 by Fletcher, Newman and Schultz recognised that the BBC is one of the most popular sources of news among both Conservative and Labour voters, and among both Leave and Remain voters. This suggests some success at providing impartial coverage. The updating of impartiality rules in 2023 by the BBC after Gary Lineker was suspended for comments he made on UK immigration policy, where he compared the language being used by the government to 1930s Germany. Most recently, the BBC has faced some criticism for its coverage of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Nonetheless, it is really difficult to reach what could be considered impartial coverage. What one person sees as a meaningful position or view, another one may not. In particular, there have been some major arguments about bias for broadcast companies such as the BBC. GB News has seen criticism for not adhering to rules around impartiality as a broadcaster. There has been criticism of the BBC that its coverage of Reform UK in the past has gone too far. The organisation Enhancing Impartiality reported, "We found that Nigel Farage and his party were featured far more prominently than the Liberal Democrats and their leader Ed Davey, despite the party having 72 MPs elected at the last general election." Trump has also announced his decision to sue the BBC in November 2025 after a BBC Panorama documentary gave a certain perspective or perception of his past conduct. The trial on that is still set to go ahead, I believe, in February 2027. Impartiality is not the only thing to talk about in relation to the impact of broadcast media on politics, though. The televisation of politics and current affairs has helped to keep the electorate educated on an ongoing basis, which is vital for a liberal democracy to work, as a politically educated public is core to it functioning. Prime Minister's Questions, PMQs, have been filmed since 1989 and broadcast live since 1990. It has led to some particularly significant events being broadcast to the electorate, such as in April 1995, where Tony Blair delivered a memorable and withering put-down to John Major after months of Tory infighting, when he said,
"I lead my party, he follows his."
More recently, in February 2016, the Prime Minister said his mother would advise the Labour leader to
put on a proper suit, do up your tie, and sing the national anthem.
In June of 2016, in one of his final appearances at Prime Minister's Questions, David Cameron told Corbyn, when the Labour leader was facing a leadership crisis,
it might be in my party's interest for him to sit there. It's not in the national interest, and I would say, for heaven's sake, man, go.
In April 2022, SNP MP Richard Thompson had labelled Boris Johnson a
Pinocchio Prime Minister
during Prime Minister's Questions. The comments were made as Mr Thompson called for the former Prime Minister to
pack his bags and go
over the COVID Partygate scandal. And during election time, a key campaigning moment that is televised makes up a significant contribution of broadcast media to the political journey of an election. And by that, I mean the leaders' debates. These normally just reinforce voting intentions. Like, for example, in 2024, the leaders' debate did little to move the needle between Sunak and Starmer, where, in truth, most people already knew who was going to win that election. It was presumed that the debate would be influential in 2010 due to the strong performance that Nick Clegg had put in that moment. But in the end, you could argue that the impact was somewhat deflated in actually electoral performance. Theresa May didn't even attend her leaders' debate in 2017, though perhaps her absence played into the collapse of her campaign and may have contributed to the Conservatives losing their majority, considering she was the more popular leader in the run-up to the election. In the end, we don't live in a country like America. Ofcom rules do establish expectations regarding how broadcasters will act. There is a meaningful difference in political coverage between, say, a provider like the BBC and something you might see reported on Fox News.
Why can't the president swear? I mean, and he doesn't even swear that much.
Even if you don't think our broadcasters do a perfect job of being impartial, there is a meaningful effort to meet those standards so that broadcasters can receive a license from Ofcom.